Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he crawled out from under the main power console. The USS Horizon was 3 months into their deep space survey mission, and everything that could break down was starting to break down. That was the problem with being the chief engineer on an exploration ship. Everyone expected you to keep ancient human technology running while you were millions of miles from the nearest repair station. "Lisa, hand me that plasma cutter," Jake called out to his electronics specialist. Lisa Carter was hunched over a control panel, her dark hair tied back in a messy ponytail. She had been working on the same faulty circuit for 2 hours. "Which one?" Lisa asked without looking up. "The big one or the small one?" "The small one. I need to get into these tight spaces." Jake took the tool and went back under the console. The Horizon was a good ship, but she was getting old. Like most human vessels, she was built to be fixed rather than replaced. That was something the other species in the galaxy never understood about humans. They built things to last forever. Humans built things to be repaired. Tony Rodriguez walked into the engine room carrying a cup of coffee and a datapad. Tony was the mechanical engineer, and he always looked like he had just finished fighting with a stubborn piece of machinery. His uniform was covered in grease stains and his hands were permanently dirty. "Jake, you need to see this," Tony said, setting down his coffee. "Kevin found something weird on the long-range sensors." Jake slid out from under the console again. Kevin Walsh was their systems analyst, and he spent most of his time staring at computer screens in the navigation room. If Kevin said something was weird, it was probably worth looking at. "What kind of weird?" Jake asked, standing up and stretching his back. "The kind that doesn't make sense," Tony replied. "He's been tracking these energy readings for the past 6 hours. They're coming from the dead system we're supposed to survey next." Lisa finally looked up from her work. "Dead systems don't give off energy readings." "That's what makes it weird," Tony said. "Kevin wants us to come look at the data." The 3 engineers walked through the narrow corridors of the Horizon to the navigation room. The ship was small compared to the massive vessels used by some of the advanced alien species, but it was comfortable. Every surface was covered with tools, spare parts, and technical manuals. It looked like a place where people actually worked. Kevin Walsh was sitting in front of 3 large monitors, his fingers dancing across multiple keyboards. Kevin was thin and pale, the kind of person who spent more time with computers than with people, but he was good at his job, and that was all that mattered on a ship like the Horizon. "Show them what you found," Tony said, pulling up a chair. Kevin pointed to the main screen. "See these readings? They're coming from the Kepler 442 system. According to our charts, that system has been dead for over 2 million years. No stars, no planets, just empty space and some asteroid debris." Jake looked at the numbers scrolling across the screen. "What kind of energy are we talking about?" "That's the strange part," Kevin said. "It's not any kind of energy signature we recognize. It's not fusion, not antimatter, not even the exotic stuff the Zephyrians use, but it's definitely artificial." Lisa leaned closer to the screen. "How far away are we?" "About 6 hours at current speed," Kevin replied. "Captain wants to know if we should investigate or report it to the Galactic Council first." Jake thought about it. The Galactic Council was the organization that governed most of the advanced species in the galaxy. They had rules about investigating unknown phenomena, especially anything that might be related to ancient technology. But they also had a habit of taking over anything interesting and keeping humans out of the loop. "Let's take a look first," Jake said finally. "If it's something dangerous, we can always call for backup." Kevin nodded and started entering commands. "I'll set course for the system. We should arrive just after the next sleep cycle." The next few hours passed slowly. Jake and his team continued their routine maintenance work, but everyone was thinking about the mysterious energy readings. The Horizon had encountered strange things before, but usually they turned out to be natural phenomena or the remains of some old battle. When they finally dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, everyone crowded into the navigation room to look at the main screen. What they saw made them all fall silent. Floating in the empty space where a star should have been was a massive structure. It was bigger than most space stations, made of some kind of dark metal that seemed to absorb light. The structure was roughly spherical, but covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. Dozens of smaller objects orbited around it, connected by what looked like energy beams or transport tubes. "Well, that's not in any of our databases," Lisa said quietly. Kevin was already running scans. "The energy readings are coming from the main structure, and there are more of them. I'm detecting at least 50 similar objects scattered throughout the system." Tony leaned forward. "Are they ships? Weapons?" "I don't think so," Kevin replied. "The energy patterns are too regular. It's more like they're collecting something or processing it." Jake stared at the screen. He had seen a lot of alien technology in his career, but nothing like this. The structure had a purpose, he could tell that much. It was built by engineers, people who understood how things worked. But the scale was beyond anything humans had ever attempted. "Take us closer," Jake said, "but keep the shields up and the engines ready." The horizon moved slowly toward the nearest structure. As they got closer, more details became visible. The dark metal surface was covered in intricate patterns that looked almost like circuit boards. Energy flowed along these patterns in predictable cycles. Whatever this thing was, it was still working. "Jake, look at this," Lisa said, pointing to her instrument panel. "I'm getting readings that look almost like power distribution systems. But the scale is enormous." Tony was studying the mechanical aspects of the structure. Those connecting tubes between the objects, they're not just transport systems. They're mechanical linkages. This whole network is designed to work together as one giant machine. Kevin pulled up historical data on his screens. "I've been checking the galactic databases. These structures match descriptions of ancient ruins that have been found in dozens of star systems, but nobody has ever seen them active before." Jake felt a familiar excitement building in his chest. It was the same feeling he got when he encountered a particularly challenging engineering problem. This wasn't just some random alien artifact. This was a machine, a massive and complex machine that had been built by people who understood engineering principles. "The other species, what do they think these things are?" Jake asked. "The Galactic Council classifies them as incomprehensible." "Ancient technology," Kevin replied. "The Zephyrians think they're some kind of religious monuments. The Crystalline Collective believes they're weapons left behind by an extinct warrior race." Lisa laughed. "Has anyone actually tried to figure out how they work?" "The Vorthan Science Ministry has been studying similar structures for over 300 years, Kevin said. "They've concluded that the technology is too advanced for any current species to understand." Jake looked at the massive structure on the screen. Energy flowed through its systems in patterns that reminded him of the power grid on Earth. The mechanical connections between different sections looked like expanded versions of systems he had worked on. Even the geometric patterns on the surface had a logic to them, like the layout of a very complex circuit board. "I think they're looking at this wrong," Jake said finally. "They're trying to understand it like it's some kind of magic." "But it's not magic, it's engineering," Tony nodded. "Big engineering, but still engineering. So what do we do?" Lisa asked. "Report it to the Council?" Jake thought about it. The Galactic Council would send a team of scientists who would study the structure for years without ever figuring out how it worked. They would classify it as another unsolvable mystery and move on. But Jake could see the solution right there on the screen. "We're going to fix it," Jake said. The other three engineers stared at him. "Fix it?" Kevin asked. "Jake, we don't even know what it does. We know it's broken," Jake replied. "Look at the energy patterns. They're incomplete. This thing is trying to work, but something is preventing it from operating at full capacity." "That's an engineering problem, and engineering problems have engineering solutions," Lisa grinned. "When you put it that way, it sounds almost easy." "I didn't say it would be easy," Jake said, "but it's possible. And if we can get this thing working, we might learn something that could help the entire galaxy." The USS Horizon moved closer to the ancient structure. carrying 4 human engineers toward the greatest repair job in galactic history. Jake Morrison stood on the docking platform of the ancient structure, looking up at walls that stretched beyond sight. The airlock had worked perfectly when they approached it. That was the first sign that whoever built this place understood the same basic engineering principles that humans used. Air pressure, magnetic seals, and safety protocols were apparently universal concepts. "The atmosphere is breathable," Lisa Carter said, checking her scanner. "Oxygen levels are actually better than what we have on the ship." Tony Rodriguez was already examining the docking mechanism. "Look at these connection points. They're designed to work with different types of ships. See how the clamps adjust? Automatically, that's smart engineering." Kevin Walsh had his portable computer connected to what looked like an access panel. "I'm getting data streams from the internal systems. It's like the structure is trying to communicate with us." Jake pulled out his toolkit and approached the nearest wall panel. The surface was covered in the same geometric patterns they had seen from space, but up close he could see that they were actually functional components. Energy flowed through channels carved into the metal, creating a complex but logical network. "This is definitely a power distribution system," Jake said, running his fingers along the channels, "but it's not working at full capacity. See these dark sections? They should be carrying energy, but something is blocking the flow." The team spent the next hour exploring the immediate area. The structure was clearly built for maintenance access. There were tool alcoves, diagnostic panels, and what looked like service tunnels throughout the walls. Everything was designed to be repaired and maintained by people who understood how the systems worked. "It's like a giant version of the engineering sections on our ship," Lisa said as they walked through a corridor lined with access panels. "Everything is labeled and organized. Even the warning signs make sense once you figure out the symbols." Tony found a large chamber filled with machinery that hummed with quiet energy. "This looks like a central processing unit. All the power flows through here before being distributed to the rest of the structure." Jake examined the machinery carefully. The components were made of materials he didn't recognize, but the design principles were familiar. There were backup systems, redundant pathways, and safety shutoffs built into every major component. Whoever built this place had been very careful engineers. "The problem is here," Jake said, pointing to a section of the machinery that was dark and silent. "This whole processing unit is designed to work in 6 sections, but only 3 are active. The other 3 have been shut down." Kevin found a diagnostic terminal and managed to connect his computer to it. According to the system logs, the shutdown happened about 2,000 years ago. Some kind of cascade failure that triggered the safety protocols. Lisa studied the inactive sections. "These components look fine. No damage, no wear. It's like the system just decided to turn them off." Jake nodded. "That's exactly what happened. This is a safety shutdown, not a breakdown. The system detected a problem and protected itself by reducing power output." Tony looked around the chamber. "So we just need to restart the shutdown sections?" "It's not that simple," Jake replied. "The system won't restart until it's sure the original problem has been fixed. We need to find out what caused the shutdown in the first place." The team spent the next several hours tracing power flows and checking system diagnostics. The structure's internal computer system was incredibly advanced, but it operated on logical principles that Kevin gradually learned to understand. The diagnostic logs told a story of a gradual system degradation that had eventually triggered the emergency shutdown. "I think I found the problem," Kevin said, staring at his screen. "The structure is part of a larger network. It's supposed to be connected to dozens of other structures throughout the galaxy. But most of those connections were lost over time." Lisa looked at the data. "So the system shut down because it couldn't complete its primary function?" "Exactly," Kevin replied. "It's like having a power plant that's designed to supply electricity to 100 cities, but only 3 cities are still connected. The system detected the imbalance and shut down to prevent damage." Jake studied the diagnostic information. "But we can override the safety protocols. If we can convince the system that the reduced network is the new normal, It should be willing. To restart, Tony raised his hand. Wait, should we be doing this? What if there's a good reason the system shut down? It was a good question. Jake looked around the chamber at the sophisticated machinery. The builders of this place had clearly been very advanced, probably more advanced than any current galactic civilization. They wouldn't have included safety shutdowns without good reasons. The system logs show that the shutdown was precautionary, Jake said finally. It wasn't responding to any kind of danger. It was just trying to protect itself from operating inefficiently. Kevin nodded. And the diagnostic systems are still monitoring for actual problems. If we restart the system and something goes wrong, it will shut down again automatically. Lisa was already examining the restart controls. These manual override switches are clearly marked. Even the safety warnings are easy to understand once. You know what to look for? Jake made his decision. We're going to restart one section at a time. If the system shows any signs of instability, we shut it down immediately. The first restart went smoothly. Jake activated the manual override for one of the shutdown sections, and the machinery came to life with a deep, satisfying hum. Energy began flowing through previously dark channels, and the chamber became noticeably brighter. Power output is up by 20%, Kevin reported. All systems are stable. Tony was watching the mechanical components. Everything is working exactly as designed. The machinery is actually running smoother now that it has more active components. Encouraged by the success, Jake restarted the second shutdown section. Again, the machinery responded perfectly. The energy flow increased, and the structure's internal systems began operating more efficiently. This is amazing, Lisa said, watching the energy patterns on her scanner. The structure is actually designed to work better with higher power levels. It's like it was sleeping and now it's waking up. Jake was about to restart the third section when Kevin's computer began displaying urgent warnings. Wait, something's happening. The system is detecting activation in other structures throughout the galaxy. The team gathered around Kevin's screen. The diagnostic display showed a map of the local galactic region with dozens of points of light scattered across it. Each light represented one of the ancient structures, and they were all beginning to show signs of activity. The restart signal is spreading through the network, Kevin said, his voice filled with excitement and concern. Each structure that comes online is sending activation commands to the others. Tony looked worried. Is that supposed to happen? I think so, Jake replied. These structures are designed to work together as a network. When we fixed this one, it automatically started bringing the others online. Lisa was monitoring the energy flows. The power levels are stabilizing across the entire network. It's like a giant electrical grid balancing itself. But then Kevin's computer started displaying different warnings. Jake, we have a problem. The system is activating something else. Something that's been dormant even longer than the power network. On the screen, new contacts were appearing throughout the galaxy. These weren't the stationary structures they had been working with. These new contacts were moving, and they were heading toward populated star systems. What are they? Tony asked. Kevin worked frantically at his computer, trying to access more detailed information. I'm not sure. The system classifies them as maintenance units, but the power signatures are enormous, much bigger than anything we've seen. Jake stared at the screen as the moving contacts spread across the galaxy. I think we just woke up more than we bargained for. The chamber around them suddenly filled with new sounds. Hidden panels in the walls began opening, revealing compartments that had been sealed for millennia. From these compartments, mechanical constructs began emerging. They were clearly artificial, but they moved with purpose and intelligence. Are those the maintenance units? Lisa asked, backing away from the nearest construct. The construct was roughly humanoid in shape, but clearly designed for heavy work. Its body was made of the same dark metal as the structure, and energy flowed through channels in its surface. As it emerged fully from its compartment, it turned toward the human engineers. I think it's looking at us, Tony said quietly. The construct approached Jake slowly, its movements careful and deliberate. When it was close enough, it extended one of its arms toward Jake's toolkit. Jake hesitated for a moment, then handed over his plasma cutter. The construct examined the tool briefly, then handed it back with what almost seemed like approval. "I think it recognizes us as engineers," Jake said. "It knows we're here to fix things." But Kevin was still staring at his screen. "Jake, the moving contacts aren't just maintenance units. Some of them are heading for the Zephyrian homeworld. And the Crystalline Collective's main colonies, they'll arrive within days." The construct that had examined Jake's tool was now moving toward the restart controls. With efficient movements, the emergency meeting at Earth's Global Engineering Corps' headquarters was unlike anything Director Helen Brooks had ever experienced. Representatives from across the galaxy had gathered in person and through holographic projection, all talking at once about the crisis that Jake Morrison's team had accidentally triggered. "The constructs have reached the Zephyrian homeworld," announced Ambassador Velkoth, his energy-based form flickering with agitation. "They began dismantling our orbital power stations without warning. Centuries of technological development destroyed in hours." Helen looked across the conference table at Paul Martinez. The linguist engineer who had been working around the clock to translate the data Jake's team had recovered. Paul's eyes were red from exhaustion, but he had managed to decode enough of the ancient technical manuals to understand what was happening. "The constructs aren't destroying your technology," Paul said calmly. "They're upgrading it." The ancient network was designed to integrate with and improve existing power systems. The representative from the Crystalline Collective, a being that looked like living crystal, resonated with what could only be described as electronic frustration. "Integration without consent is invasion. Our living ships are being altered in ways we do not understand." Helen stood up, trying to bring order to the chaos. "Let me get this straight. The ancient constructs are modifying alien technology without permission, and everyone thinks this is an attack? What else could it be?" demanded Admiral Vex-9 of the robotic hegemony. "Unknown machines are altering our systems. They ignore all attempts at communication. They respond to weapons fire by neutralizing our defenses." Paul pulled up a holographic display showing the technical specifications he had decoded. "According to the ancient manuals, the constructs are maintenance units. They're programmed to optimize and repair any technology they encounter. They're not trying to harm anyone. They're trying to help." "Help?" Ambassador Velkoth's energy form pulsed brighter. "They have absorbed 3 of our star-powered generators. How is that helping?" "Because your generators were operating at 12% efficiency," Paul replied. "The constructs detected the massive energy waste and corrected it. Your generators are now producing 20 times more power than before." Helen looked around the room at the assembled aliens. Most of them had expressions of confusion and anger, but a few were beginning to look thoughtful. "Paul, explain it in terms they can understand." Paul activated another display. "Imagine you have a water pipe that's leaking. You've learned to live with the leak, but it wastes water and reduces pressure. Then someone comes along and fixes the pipe without asking. You might be upset about the intrusion, but you can't argue with the results." The Crystalline Collective representative vibrated at a lower frequency. "Our living ships are reporting increased energy efficiency and enhanced structural integrity. But the modifications were made without our knowledge or consent." "That's because the constructs don't see the need for consent," Paul explained. "They're maintenance units. In their programming, inefficient technology is broken technology, and broken technology should be fixed immediately." Helen could see that some of the aliens were beginning to understand, but others were still focused on the perceived threat. "What about the reports of constructs neutralizing weapons?" "They're not neutralizing weapons," Paul said. "They're neutralizing what they classify as safety hazards. Any technology that could damage the network or harm maintenance personnel is automatically disabled." Admiral Vex-9 leaned forward. "So they will not allow us to defend ourselves?" "They will not allow you to damage yourself or others," Paul replied. "There's a difference." Helen's communication device chimed with an incoming message from the USS Horizon. Jake Morrison's face appeared on the screen, looking tired but excited. Helen, we've made contact with the Construct Network. They're willing to communicate, but only through engineering demonstrations. Engineering demonstrations? Helen asked. They don't understand words or diplomacy, Jake explained. But they understand competence. If you can prove you know how to fix things properly, they'll work with you. If you can't, they'll work around you. The room fell silent as the aliens processed this information. The Zephyrians were used to negotiating through elaborate ceremonies. The crystalline collective communicated through harmonic resonance. The idea of proving themselves through manual labor was foreign to most of them. We have tried to communicate with them, Ambassador Velkoth said. They ignore our attempts. That's because you're trying to talk to them like they're politicians, Jake replied from the screen. They're not politicians. They're engineers. Show them a broken machine and fix it correctly, and they'll listen to you. Try to give them orders without demonstrating competence, and they'll ignore you. Helen looked around the room. So the solution is to prove to the constructs that we're competent engineers? That's part of it, Jake said. But there's more. Paul, show them the network diagrams. Paul activated a new display that showed the ancient network spanning multiple galaxies. The constructs are reactivating and upgrading the entire network. When it's complete, every spacefaring civilization will have access to unlimited clean energy. The room erupted in discussion again. The idea of unlimited energy was appealing, but the method of achieving it was causing problems for everyone. The issue is time, Helen said loudly, bringing the room back to order. The constructs are working on a timescale that doesn't account for political and social concerns. They're fixing everything at once, and that's causing chaos. Can they be slowed down? Asked the crystalline collective representative. Jake's image shook his head. Not without proving to them that we have a better plan. Remember, they're maintenance units. Their job is to fix things as efficiently as possible. If we want them to work differently, we need to demonstrate that our approach is more effective. Helen turned to Paul. How long do we have before the constructs reach the core worlds? Based on their current speed, they'll reach the galactic capital within 6 days, Paul replied. But they're not heading there to attack. They're heading there to upgrade the central power grid. The central power grid supplies energy to 50 billion people, Admiral X9 pointed out. If they modify it incorrectly, the consequences could be catastrophic. They won't modify it incorrectly, Paul said. That's not how they work. But they will modify it without warning, and they won't explain what they're doing until after it's done. Helen made a decision. We need to get ahead of this. Paul, can you communicate with the constructs directly? Not exactly, Paul replied. But I can interpret their technical documentation. If we can demonstrate that we understand their protocols, they might be willing to coordinate with us. What do you need? A team of engineers who can work with alien technology, Paul said, and access to one of the construct units so we can establish proper communication protocols. Jake's image leaned forward. I can provide both. We have several constructs working on the network here, and they seem to approve of our methods. If you can send a team of engineers who understand the principles Paul has discovered, we might be able to establish a working relationship. Helen looked around the room at the alien representatives. I need volunteers? Engineers who are willing to work directly with the constructs to establish communication and coordination protocols. The room was quiet for a moment. Then the crystalline collective representative spoke up. I will provide technical specialists. If these constructs can truly improve our technology, we must learn to work with them. The Zephyrians will also participate, Ambassador Velkoth said. But we require assurance that our systems will not be modified without our knowledge. That's exactly what we're trying to establish, Helen replied. Jake, how soon can you accommodate additional team members? We can have docking facilities ready within 12 hours, Jake said. But I need to warn everyone, working with the constructs requires a different mindset. They don't care about rank or credentials, they only care about results. Helen nodded. Understood. Paul, prepare briefing materials for the international team. Everyone else select your best engineers, not your best diplomats. We're going to solve this problem the same way humans solve every problem, by fixing it. As the meeting broke up, Helen remained behind with Paul. Do you really think this will work? Paul looked at the technical diagrams still displayed on the screen. The constructs have been maintaining this network for millions of years. They know what they're doing. The question is whether we can learn to work with them before they finish upgrading the galaxy with or without our help. And if we can't, then we'll have unlimited clean energy and perfectly maintained technology. Paul said, but we'll have no control over how it's implemented. The constructs will do what they think is best, whether we like it or not. Helen looked out the window at the stars. Let's hope our engineers are as good as we think they are. In space, the ancient constructs continued their work, moving from system to system with mechanical precision. They had waited millions of years for someone to restart the network. Now that it was active, they would not be stopped by anything as simple as politics or fear. They had work to do, and they would do it with or without cooperation from the galaxies. Jake Morrison watched as the mixed team of engineers gathered in the main chamber of the ancient structure. The group was unlike anything he had ever worked with before. Amy Foster, the communications engineer, was setting up translation equipment next to a crystalline collective technician whose body sparkled with internal light. Carlos Mendez, their power systems expert, was comparing notes with a Zephyrian energy specialist whose form shifted between solid and plasma states. This is either going to work perfectly or be a complete disaster, Lisa Carter said quietly as she watched a construct approach the group. The mechanical being moved with careful precision, its energy channels pulsing in steady patterns. Tony Rodriguez was already trying to communicate with another construct through hand gestures and tool demonstrations. Look at this, he called. Out. I show it a broken coupling and it immediately understands what needs to be fixed. Diane Nelson, the robotics engineer who had arrived with the second wave of specialists, was studying the construct's movement patterns. They're not just machines. They're learning from our interactions. Each time we demonstrate something, they adapt their responses. The breakthrough came when Sam Taylor, the newest member of Jake's original team, made a simple observation. They're not trying to talk to us, Sam said. They're trying to teach us. Jake looked at the construct that had been following him around the chamber. The mechanical being had been mimicking his actions, copying the way he used tools and approached repair problems. You're right, it's like having a very patient instructor. Amy Foster activated her translation equipment and connected it to the construct's communication port. Instead of trying to decode language, she focused on the technical protocols the construct was using. I'm getting data streams that look like instruction manuals. The construct is literally trying to show us how to do our jobs better. The crystalline collective technician, whose name was roughly translated as clear resonance, vibrated with excitement. My construct is demonstrating advanced crystal harmonics. Techniques our people lost centuries ago. Carlos Mendez was having similar success with his Zephyrian partner. The energy manipulation methods these constructs know are far beyond what any current civilization uses. They're not just maintaining technology, they're teaching us how to improve it. But the real test came when Rachel Wong led her team to one of the network nodes that had been damaged by previous alien attempts to study it. The node was a complex piece of machinery that connected the local structure to the broader galactic network, and it had been offline for several years. The Vorthan Science Ministry tried to analyze this node 3 years ago. Rachel explained to her mixed team of human and alien engineers. They managed to disable it completely before giving up. The construct assigned to Rachel's team moved to the damaged node and began displaying diagnostic information on its surface panels. The data was complex, but the message was clear. The node could be repaired, but it required specific techniques and materials. It's showing us a repair procedure, said Mike Johnson, studying the displayed information. But some of these steps require tools we don't have. The construct moved to a wall panel and activated what appeared to be a fabrication system. Within minutes, it had produced exact replicas of the required tools, customized for human hands. They can make anything we need, Rachel said, amazed. As long as we can prove we know how to use it properly. The repair work took several hours, but it proceeded smoothly. The construct guided the team through each step, demonstrating the correct techniques and providing immediate feedback when someone made a mistake. By the end of the process, the node was not only repaired but operating at higher efficiency than the original specifications indicated. Frank Davis, the veteran mechanic who had initially been skeptical of working with aliens, found himself impressed by the collaborative approach. "It's like having the best teacher in the galaxy," he told his partner, a robotics specialist from the hegemony. "The construct doesn't care that we're different species. It only cares that we're learning to do the job right." Linda Thompson was working with a team to establish communication protocols between the constructs and the various alien governments. The constructs had been ignoring official diplomatic communications, but they responded immediately to technical requests from qualified engineers. "The key is demonstrating competence first," Linda explained to the diplomatic observers who had arrived to monitor the project. "The constructs won't negotiate with people they don't consider qualified. But once you prove you can handle the technology, they're willing to coordinate." The success of the engineering teams led to a rapid change in the galactic response to the construct activity. Instead of viewing the constructs as invaders, civilizations began sending their best engineers to learn from them. The results were immediate and dramatic. On the Zephyrian homeworld, the modified power stations were producing more energy than the entire previous grid system. The Crystalline Collective's living ships were operating with capabilities they had never possessed before. Even the robotic hegemony admitted that their upgraded systems were far superior to their original designs, but the real test came when Victoria Hayes led the first joint human construct research team to investigate a completely unknown type of network component. The device was enormous, larger than most space stations, and it had been dormant for so long that even the constructs weren't certain of its original purpose. "The diagnostic systems show that this device is designed to work with organic technology," Victoria reported to Jake. "But none of the current galactic civilizations use purely organic systems." The construct working with Victoria's team activated a series of displays that showed star maps spanning multiple galaxies. The maps included markers for civilizations that none of the current galactic powers had ever encountered. "I think this device is designed to communicate with species we haven't met yet," Victoria said. "The constructs are preparing the network for contact with civilizations from other galaxies." Jake felt a chill as he realized the implications. The ancient network wasn't just designed to provide energy to the current galactic civilizations. It was designed to support contact and cooperation between civilizations across multiple galaxies. "How many civilizations are we talking about?" Jake asked. The construct displayed additional star maps, showing network connections that extended far beyond the visible universe. The scale was so vast that it was difficult to comprehend. "Hundreds," Victoria replied quietly. "Maybe thousands. The network connects to other networks, which connect to other networks. It's like a galactic internet, but for entire civilizations." Roy Anderson, who had been leading the space-based repair teams, reported similar discoveries. "The constructs are building something big? Not just repairing the existing network, but expanding it. They're preparing for some kind of major activation." Jake gathered his expanded team for an emergency meeting. The chamber was now filled with engineers from dozens of species, all working together under the patient guidance of the constructs. The cooperation was unprecedented, but so was the scope of what they were discovering. "We need to understand what the constructs are preparing for," Jake said. "The network is becoming active on a scale that goes far beyond anything we imagined." Amy Foster had been monitoring the construct communications for patterns. "They're not just maintenance units, they're preparation units. They're getting the network ready for something specific." Carlos Mendez looked at the energy readings from across the galaxy. Power generation is increasing exponentially. Whatever they're preparing for, it's going to require enormous amounts of energy. Diane Nelson had been studying the construct behavior patterns. They're working faster now, more urgently. like they're running out of time. Scott Miller, the apprentice engineer who had been learning directly from the constructs, made an observation that changed everything. They're not just fixing the network, they're preparing for visitors. Jake looked at the young engineer. What kind of visitors? The kind that built the network in the first place, Scott replied. The constructs have been maintaining and preparing this network for millions of years. They're getting ready for the original builders to return. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The ancient civilization that had built the galactic network was still out there, somewhere beyond the edge of known space. And they were coming back. How long do we have? Jake asked. The construct nearest to him activated a display showing a countdown timer. The numbers were in an alien script, but the meaning was clear. 37 days, Amy Foster translated. Whatever's coming, it will be here in 37 days. Jake looked around at his team of human and alien engineers. Then we better make sure the network is ready for them. The constructs resumed their work with renewed intensity, and the engineers worked alongside them, preparing for the return of the galaxy's original builders. The countdown reached 0 at exactly noon, Galactic Standard Time. Jake Morrison stood in the central command chamber, surrounded by engineers from every known species in the galaxy. The ancient network hummed with more power than it had carried. In millions of years, and every construct in the galaxy had stopped their repair work to wait. Energy readings are off the charts, Amy Foster reported from her monitoring station. The network is drawing power from sources I can't even identify. Lisa Carter was tracking the network activity across multiple star systems. All the nodes are synchronized. Whatever's about to happen, it's going to involve the entire galaxy. Then the space around the central network hub began to shimmer. Reality seemed to bend and twist, and suddenly massive structures began materializing out of nothing. They were ships, but ships unlike anything anyone had ever seen. They were smooth and organic-looking, as if they had been grown rather than built. "Those aren't ships," Tony Rodriguez said, staring at his screens. "They're living beings." The creatures were enormous, each one the size of a small moon. They moved through space with graceful, flowing motions that suggested intelligence and purpose. As they approached the network, patterns of light began flowing across their surfaces in response to the energy emissions from the ancient structures. Victoria Hayes was monitoring the communication channels. "They're talking to the network. The energy patterns are some kind of language." Jake watched as one of the creatures approached their position. Up close, he could see that its surface was covered in the same geometric patterns that decorated the ancient structures. But these patterns were alive, shifting and changing as the creature communicated. The network was built by living beings. Jake realized, not a technological civilization like us. A biological one? The constructs throughout the chamber suddenly became active, moving with more purpose than Jake had ever seen. They approached the various engineering teams and began displaying new information on their surfaces. The data was complex, but the message was clear. The builders had returned, and they were pleased with the work that had been done. Carlos Mendez was translating the energy patterns with help from his Zephyrian partner. "They're expressing gratitude. The network has been maintained better than they expected." Kevin Walsh had connected his systems to the main communication array. "I'm getting massive data downloads. Technical specifications, historical records, star charts showing connections to other galaxies. They're sharing everything." The largest of the creatures positioned itself directly in front of the central network hub. Patterns of light flowed across its surface, and suddenly Jake could hear a voice in his mind. It wasn't words exactly, but concepts that his brain automatically translated into language he could understand. "We are the architects," the voice said. "We built this network as a gift to the younger species who would come after us. We did not expect it to be maintained so well, or for so many species to learn to work together." Jake stepped forward, feeling both terrified and honored. "We almost didn't figure it out. Your constructs had to teach us how to work with the technology." "The constructs were programmed to guide and teach," the voice replied. "But they could only work with species who approached. The network with the right mindset. Most species try to understand our technology through theory and analysis. Your species approaches it through practical application and repair. Amy Foster looked up from her translation equipment. They're saying that humans think like they do. We see a broken machine and want to fix it just like they did when they were physical beings. We evolved beyond the need for physical forms long ago, the architect continued. But we remember what it was like to build and repair and improve. Your species has that same drive and you have taught it to others. The other creatures began connecting to different parts of the network and suddenly the galaxy was transformed. The energy grid that the engineers had been working to repair became a true galactic internet, connecting not just power systems but communication networks, transportation systems, and even the consciousness of willing participants. They're offering to share their knowledge, Victoria Hayes reported, tears streaming down her face. Everything they've learned in millions of years of existence. Art, science, philosophy, technology, it's all being uploaded to the network. But the most amazing transformation was happening to the engineers themselves. The months of working alongside the constructs and learning to think like the architects had changed them. Human, Zephyrian, crystalline, and dozens of other species had learned to work together in ways that none of them had thought possible. Look at this, Diane Nelson said, pointing to a repair project where a human engineer, a robotics specialist, and a living crystal were working together to upgrade a power coupling. 6 months ago, these species couldn't even communicate properly. Now they're working together like they've been partners for years. Jake was appointed as the first director of galactic infrastructure, but he knew the title was mostly ceremonial. The real work was being done by thousands of engineers from hundreds of species, all learning from each other and from the ancient knowledge the architects were sharing. Roy Anderson took command of the new fleet of hybrid vessels that combined the best of galactic technology with systems based on architect designs. These ships could travel between galaxies as easily as they once traveled between star systems. The network extends to other galaxies, Roy reported during one of his early missions. There are species out there we've never imagined, all connected by networks like this one. We're not just part of a galactic community anymore, we're part of a universal one. The Galactic Engineering Academy was established on a space station built around one of the largest network nodes. Students from across the galaxy came to learn not just technical skills, but the collaborative approaches that had made the network restoration possible. Frank Davis, despite his age, became one of the Academy's most popular instructors. His classes on practical problem solving were attended by beings who had studied theoretical engineering for centuries. The most important tool an engineer can have, Frank told his students, is the willingness to get your hands dirty and fix things the right way, even if it's not the fancy way. Linda Thompson established the Interspecies Engineering Council, which coordinated major infrastructure projects across multiple star systems. The council operated on principles that the constructs had taught them: competence before authority, results before theories, and cooperation before competition. But perhaps the most important change was happening on a smaller scale. In workshops and repair bays throughout the galaxy, engineers who had never spoken to each other before were working side by side, sharing techniques and solving problems together. Scott Miller, who had been just an apprentice when the network was first activated, became one of the leading experts on construct communication. His work made it possible for new species to integrate into the network quickly and safely. The constructs don't see species, Scott explained to a group of new Academy students. They see engineers. If you can prove you know how to fix things and make them better, they'll work with you regardless of what you look like or where you come from. The galaxy had been transformed, but the architects made it clear that this was just the beginning. The network was designed to grow and evolve, connecting more species and more galaxies as new civilizations developed the ability to contribute to its maintenance and expansion. We built this network because we understood that intelligence and creativity are the universe's most precious resources, the lead architect explained to Jake during one of their conversations. Every species that learns to maintain and improve The network adds something unique to the collective knowledge. Jake looked out at the galaxy where energy flowed freely between star systems, where species that had been isolated for millennia were now working together, and where the ancient dream of universal cooperation was finally becoming reality. "So what happens now?" Jake asked. "Now you continue the work," the architect replied. "You build, you repair, you improve, and you teach others to do the same. The network will be here long after your species and ours have evolved into something new, but the knowledge and the cooperation you've established will continue." As Jake watched a team of young engineers from 6 different species working together to upgrade a communication relay, he realized that the galaxy had gained something more valuable than unlimited energy. It had gained the knowledge that any problem, no matter how complex, could be solved if enough people were willing to work together and get their hands dirty. The ancient network hummed with power and purpose, carrying energy and information to civilizations across multiple galaxies. And in workshops and engineering bays throughout the cosmos, beings of every imaginable form continued the work of building, repairing, and improving the universe one problem at a time.